In the shadow of Mount Damavand, where the ancient Persian Empire once cast its influence across 3 continents, a different kind of power was being wielded. It was 521 BCE, and Darius I stood before the rock face at Behistun, watching as sculptors carved his triumph over pretenders to the throne, a permanent testament to Persian imperial might. "The gods have chosen me to rule," he proclaimed to his assembled generals and advisors. Yet divine favor alone does not sustain an empire. Among those listening was Wajid Arman, the young Persian nobleman who had fought alongside Darius against the false Smerdis. He had witnessed firsthand how Darius had secured power through a combination of military prowess, strategic alliances, and cultural accommodation, approaches that would define Persian rule for centuries. The Persian Empire, at its height stretching from the Indus Valley to North Africa and from Central Asia to the Danube River in Europe, endured for over 2 centuries as the world's first true superpower. While other ancient empires rose and fell in relatively short periods, the Achaemenid Persian Empire, 550 to 330 BCE, maintained remarkable stability, followed by later Persian dynasties that continued to influence world history. What made Persian rule distinctive? What allowed them to avoid the common pitfalls that brought down other ancient powers? 3 critical strategies separated Persian governance from their contemporaries, creating a template for imperial management that would influence empire builders for millennia to come. The first was their approach to conquered peoples. While the Assyrians who preceded them had ruled through terror and the Romans who followed often imposed their culture, the Persian model pioneered by Cyrus the Great, 559 to 530 BCE, embraced cultural tolerance as imperial policy. When Cyrus conquered Babylon in 539 BCE, he did not destroy their temples or force Persian gods upon them. Instead, he freed the Jewish captives held there since the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem, allowed them to return home, and even funded the rebuilding of their temple. The Cyrus Cylinder, a clay document from this period discovered in 1879, records what many historians consider one of the first declarations of human rights. "I permitted all to dwell in peace," reads the Cylinder's text, detailing how Cyrus allowed conquered peoples to maintain their cultural and religious practices. This was no mere kindness but calculated statecraft. By respecting local customs and incorporating existing administrative structures rather than demolishing them, Persian rulers minimized resistance and administrative costs while maximizing tax revenue and military recruitment. Other empires before us ruled through fear alone, Darius reportedly told Wajid during their campaign to suppress revolts early in his reign. But fear breeds resentment, and resentment becomes rebellion. Better to be respected than merely feared. This philosophy manifested in the satrap system, provincial governments led by Persian nobles but staffed largely by local officials familiar with regional needs and customs. While the Achaemenids maintained ultimate authority through military garrisons and the famous network of royal roads and messengers, day-to-day governance remained substantially local. When Alexander the Great finally conquered Persia in 330 BCE after nearly 2 centuries of Achaemenid rule, he was so impressed by this system that he adopted many elements of Persian administrative practice, a testament to its effectiveness. The second crucial difference was the Persian approach to infrastructure and economic development. While many ancient empires focused primarily on extractive economics, taking wealth from conquered territories through plunder and tribute, the Persians invested heavily in infrastructure that facilitated trade and agriculture. Under Darius I, 522 to 486 BCE, the empire constructed the Royal Road, a 1,600-mile highway stretching from Sardis in western Turkey to Susa in modern-day Iran. This engineering marvel featured regular posting stations with fresh horses and accommodations for travelers, enabling messages to travel the entire distance in just 7 days, an unprecedented speed that would not be matched until the advent of the telegraph in the 19th century. "An empire moves at the speed of its messengers," Darius told his engineers as they planned the road network. "And trades at the speed of its merchants." The Persians also pioneered sophisticated irrigation systems. The Qanat underground aqueduct system, tunnels that tapped into mountain aquifers and transported water via gravity to lowland settlements, transformed arid regions into productive agricultural centers. Many of these ingenious water management systems remained in use for over 2,500 years, with some still functioning in modern Iran. Persian coins, standardized across the empire, facilitated trade from India to Macedonia. The daric, a gold coin weighing 8.4 grams, became the ancient world's most trusted currency, enabling commerce on an unprecedented scale. In 480 BCE, as Xerxes led his massive invasion force toward Greece, he paused at the Hellespont to observe his engineers construct what ancient historians described as an engineering wonder, a pontoon bridge spanning the strait between Asia and Europe. When a storm destroyed their first attempt, Xerxes did something that revealed Persian governance philosophy. Rather than merely punishing the engineers as many autocrats might have done, he commissioned a more robust design that could withstand the region's weather patterns. The natural world does not bend to royal commands, the Persian king reportedly told his frustrated generals. We must understand it and work with its forces, not against them. This pragmatic approach to nature and infrastructure extended to urban planning as well. Persepolis, founded by Darius I around 518 BCE as the ceremonial capital, featured advanced drainage systems, administrative buildings designed for efficient governance, and palace architecture that showcased Persian power while incorporating artistic elements from every corner of the empire. The third distinctive strategy of Persian rule involved their military and security approach. Unlike many contemporary powers that relied heavily on forced conscription and direct military occupation, Persian security rested on a combination of overwhelming deterrent capability, strategic flexibility, and diplomatic integration. The famous Immortals, an elite force of 10,000 Persian warriors so named because their numbers were immediately replenished when casualties occurred, served as both practical military force and powerful psychological symbol. Their presence at the imperial court demonstrated Persian might, while their deployment to trouble spots could quickly suppress rebellion. However, Persian military strength derived not just from Persian soldiers but from the empire's ability to incorporate diverse fighting styles and units from across their domains. Parthian horse archers, Egyptian marines, Bactrian cavalry, Greek hoplites, all served in Persian armies, each bringing specialized capabilities that created a remarkably adaptive fighting force. When Wajid Arman commanded Persian forces against rebellious Greek cities in Ionia around 498 BCE, he employed a strategy that demonstrated this flexibility. The Greeks expect us to meet their hoplites in direct confrontation, he told his officers before the Battle of Ephesus. Instead, we will use Scythian horse archers to harass their flanks while our Egyptian marines land behind their position. This combinatorial approach, using diverse units in ways that maximized their strengths while negating enemy advantages, became a hallmark of Persian military thinking. It allowed relatively small numbers of Persian administrators and soldiers to control vast territories by adapting to local conditions rather than imposing a single tactical doctrine. Persian security policy extended beyond battlefield tactics to include what modern analysts would call defense in depth. The empire maintained multiple layers of security, diplomatic alliances with buffer states, networks of informants, rapid response forces stationed at key points along the royal road, and a system of fortified cities and mountain passes that channeled potential invaders into predictable routes where they could be effectively countered. The stability created by these three approaches, cultural accommodation, infrastructure investment, and flexible security, enabled Persian civilization to flourish culturally and intellectually. The administrative center at Persepolis housed scholars from across the known world. Persian gardens, paradise enclosures that combined aesthetic beauty with agricultural experimentation, influenced landscape design from North Africa to India. Persian astronomy, medicine, and mathematics incorporated and developed knowledge from Babylonian, Egyptian, and Indian traditions. Ban-Usher-Rahimi, a Bactrian noblewoman whose husband served as satrap under Artaxerxes II, 404 to 358 BCE, described Persian governance philosophy in a letter discovered by archaeologists in 1963. The Persian king calls himself King of Kings not to claim dominion over all, but to acknowledge that many kings exist within the empire, each ruling according to their people's traditions under the protection of the great king. This philosophy, unity through managed diversity rather than enforced uniformity, proved remarkably durable. Even when Alexander conquered the Persian Empire, he adopted many Persian administrative practices and married Persian noble women to integrate the ruling classes. Later, when the Parthians, 247 BCE, 224 CE, and then the Sasanians, 224 to 651 CE, restored Persian rule, they largely maintained the governance principles pioneered by the Achaemenids. The Persian model's effectiveness becomes even clearer when contrasted with empires that failed to apply similar principles. The Neo-Assyrian Empire that preceded the Persians ruled through systematic terror, mass deportations, gruesome public executions, and the deliberate destruction of conquered cities. While effective in the short term, this approach generated such hatred that when the Assyrian capital of Nineveh fell in 612 BCE, multiple peoples joined forces to ensure the empire was utterly destroyed. The Athenian Empire in the 5th century BCE initially succeeded through alliances but gradually transformed these relationships into naked domination, demanding tribute while offering little in return. Their heavy-handed treatment of allies like Melos, which they completely destroyed in 416 BCE, eroded support and contributed to their defeat in the Peloponnesian War. Rome, despite its longevity, struggled with many of the same issues. During its Republican period, Rome often extended citizenship and incorporated local elites, much like the Persians. However, as the empire expanded, it frequently reverted to extractive economic policies that enriched Rome while impoverishing provinces, creating the conditions for eventual collapse. The lessons from Persian imperial management remain relevant today. Modern multinational organizations, whether corporations, international institutions, or political federations, face similar challenges of governing diverse constituencies across vast geographic areas. The Persian emphasis on cultural accommodation parallels modern discussions about institutional diversity and inclusion. Their infrastructure investments resemble contemporary debates about sustainable development and long-term economic planning versus short-term resource extraction. Their layered security approach mirrors modern concepts of resilience and adaptability in organizational security. When the Arab conquest finally ended Sasanian Persian rule in 651 CE, more than a millennium after Cyrus the Great founded the First Persian Empire, many Persian administrative practices were adopted by the Islamic caliphates that followed. The Persian language remained the administrative language of much of the Muslim world for centuries, and Persian concepts of governance continued to influence political thought from the Mediterranean to India. As Darius I stood before his monumental inscription at Behistun in 521 BCE, he could not have known that the principles he and his predecessors established would influence empire builders for millennia. The Persian Empire's greatest legacy was not just its monuments or conquests, but its demonstration that effective governance across diverse populations requires accommodation rather than assimilation, investment rather than mere extraction, and adaptive security rather than rigid control. An empire, as Wajid Arman reportedly told his son before departing for his final campaign, is not merely land and subjects but a harmony of differences, like a great orchestra where each instrument plays its own part yet contributes to a greater whole. In our modern era of global interconnection and complex organizational challenges, the Persian model offers enduring lessons about sustainable governance, proving that sometimes the most effective power is not the most visible or brutal, but the most adaptable and inclusive.